Hey everybody, I'm Patrick and this is Rocky Mountain Style. If this is your first time here, welcome, and if not, welcome back. Today I have another long-term boot review video on the Tailor Stitch trench boot. This is in golden brown waxed suede. I got this on a Black Friday sale last year, so we're coming up again to the Black Friday season. So we're at 1 year, so I figured it's time to do a little bit of an update for you. So this boot is definitely one of my favorites as far as looks goes. The silhouette, the coloration in general, and just sort of how it's put together, really big fan. And for a company that's not a dedicated boot brand like Tailor Stitch, they focus mainly on apparel, outerwear, things like that. But they also do a few boots and footwear here and there that are, generally small releases. I think they actually do a pretty good job with the design and construction of this as well. So if you're interested in hearing a little more about this boot and seeing how it's sort of changed over the last year of me having it, stick around. Tailor Stitch doesn't have a ton of boot offerings. They do have a few. They have the trench boot, of course, which we're talking about today. They have the ranch boot, the moto boot, and then they have the Forester Chukka, which only comes in one style. The moto boot's kind of interesting. It's a cap toe version of this trench boot, but probably with a slight few different changes. The ranch boot I think looks pretty cool. It's a very rugged Chelsea. But they also have a loafer, which if that's still around in the springtime, there's a good chance I'll pick that up. And they have two collab pieces of footwear here, a Danner boot with some camo on it. So not really my style, but if that's your style, I'm sure that could be kind of cool. And then a sandal from Chaco, which I recognize the name Chaco, but I don't generally wear sandals, so don't have any experience with them. But today we're talking about the trench boot in golden brown wax suede, of course. It's $348. It comes in sizes 7 through 13, all D widths. No wide widths are available. The boot is made in Mexico, Leon, Mexico specifically. And I wanted to show this over on a different part of Tailor Stitch's website. They do have a little bit of a blurb about the factory called Dante, which is a family-owned factory in Leon, Mexico, where the boots are made. And they talk about the sustainability of the factory and how it's positioned in the community. They have a few specs here about the employees when it opened and what products they've made there, which I think is pretty cool. Normally, you don't get a highlight on a factory on a company's website when they're using a third-party factory. So kind of neat. And if you're interested, go check it out. Go watch this little short video here. But back to the boot. So here are the specs. They call it a 4-ounce waxed suede. The suede is not super stiff. I found it to be pretty pliable, but it's held up well. It wasn't really hard to break in my opinion. At least the upper wasn't hard to break in. The sole was a little bit of a different story. It is Goodyear storm welt construction. So as you can see here, the welt has that little bump up on the side. That's a telltale sign that it's a storm welt, although that's, it could also be a split welt or other things, but they call this a storm welt. It is resolable, of course. It has that Vibram mini lug sole, which I'll talk more about later. Natural leather midsole, fully lined on the inside, 6 eyelets, 2 speed hooks, fully lined with leather, wax laces, no break-in period, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so $348. That's probably the biggest talking point here. I bought these last year on a Black Friday sale. I can't recall if it was 15% off or 20% off, but I believe I paid in the high 200s, so I think it was 20% off, maybe like 280, something like that. But at 348, at least last year, I would not have bought these. So the sale did help me pull the trigger and help me experience these boots. So I can say now, after wearing them for a year and experiencing them, I don't think 348 is an overcharge. I wouldn't call it a particularly awesome value, but you definitely get what you pay for. You're not getting more than what you pay for. So I think the closest competitor to this type of a boot with this suede construction and the general styling in this general price point is actually Parkhurst boots. Since Parkhurst is a dedicated boot maker, I think their fit and finish is slightly better, uh, and their designs are probably a little bit more nuanced. However, I think overall feel for how this boot is on the foot compared to Parkhurst is actually pretty similar. So the fact that a tailor stitch boot, which I'm not sure if they designed it or if they had someone from Dante design it, but the fact that they can get close enough to one of those dedicated boot brands, which is well thought of in the industry, I think is pretty impressive. And I really do like this boot overall. So 348 is a reasonable price, but if you can get it on a sale, go ahead and get it on a sale when you can, right? Now that we've spoken about specs and pricing, let's get into a little bit of what I like about this boot. So the first thing I like about this boot is the color choices that they made, not only with the leather, but with the welt. So the interplay of the golden brown wax suede and the natural welt, along with the black outsole, black top lift, dark brown laces, and the bronze and sort of antique bronze hardware, I think was a really good choice. What you end up having is good contrast within the boot, and then you have enough variation that the boot picks up most accent colors you might wear in any outfit. So as it turns out, the boot is extremely versatile when it comes to pretty much any outfit you're going to wear. It goes fantastically with denim. It goes well with dark chinos. It goes well with light chinos. It goes well with shades of green. I've worn it with burgundy. I've worn it literally with every pair of pants in my closet, and I think it ends up looking really good. Another thing I like about the boot are the proportions. What I mean by that is when you're dealing with the heritage boot industry, pretty much everybody makes a service boot, right? Or what they call a service boot, which is this general style, 6-inch shaft, Goodyear welted, between 5 and 7 eyelets, sometimes with, 1, 2, 3 speed hooks, plain toes and cap toes. But generally speaking, they all have this same silhouette. However, when you just look at a few next to each other that otherwise would be identical to, the uninitiated from the boot world, some just look better than others to your eye. I guess they say beauty's in the eye of the beholder. To me personally, and your mileage may vary, I think this is one of the better silhouettes. It's clean, the proportions are all correct, and I don't think there's anything out of place about the actual style of the boot. So I think it's going to look good on anyone of any body type. So that's one of the reasons why I really like the boot. It seems like a small thing. It seems like something you might overlook, or you may not even understand why you like a particular boot, but the proportions themselves, I think, are really it. Another thing that I like about the boot is the last. So when I first got the boot and I put it on, I could tell that it fit. It was the right size. It wasn't too tight anywhere. I didn't have any hot spots or anything like that. But the comfort wasn't quite there. I trusted in the process and said, okay, let's get this worn. I really like how it looks, so let's get this worn in, let's get this broken in and see what happens. Well, I'm really glad that I did that and I stuck with it because once everything broke in, it supports me in all the right spots. There are, again, no hot spots. There's no extra room up front where there's too much room, so that your foot wiggles side to side, but there's still plenty of room to wiggle your toes in the boot. So they don't have a last name, Taylor Stitch is not a boot company. They don't have a bunch of different lasts, but whatever they did, down at the Dante factory in Leon, whoever came up with the design or whoever used this last, it's a very good one for my particular foot, which tends to be about average. If I was on the side of narrow or wide, I'd be on the side of wide, but still definitely, a normal D width in general for my foot. So if that sort of jives with what your foot is, I think there's a good chance this will be comfortable for you. And then the last thing is the fact that it has a gusseted tongue. So a lot of boots from companies that aren't admittedly, the higher end companies may cut corners here and there because they don't have the right economies of scale or because they just don't think it's important or because they want to keep their boot at a certain price point. But the gusseted tongue is something I really appreciate on any boot that I buy. So the fact that these boots have the gusseted tongue is a big plus in my book. Okay, so what would I change about the boot? The first thing I'd change is the eyelet speed hook configuration. And I know that this generally isn't too big of a deal, but the fact that it has 6 eyelets and 2 speed hooks, I think is 1 eyelet too many. I think you need, on a 6-inch boot, I think you need 7 fixation points, 7 lace points at max. And there's 8 here. So if they went down to 5 eyelets and 2 speed hooks and spaced them out a little bit more, I think that'd be better. Because in my opinion, I think the laces are a little closely spaced and they end up getting a little overwhelming at times when you look at them top down when everything's laced up. So a very minor nitpick, but still one nonetheless. Another thing I would change about it is the sole. So the Vibram Mini Lug sole is not my favorite, as you guys know. However, on these, since they're fully broken in, I've gotten used to it. They're not uncomfortable per se. It's just their particular properties are a little bit off-putting for me. And the first property of that is the loudness. I'll go ahead and insert a clip of me walking in these on the hardwood floors. They're pretty loud. I don't like that about the boot. Now, if you're walking around on, grass or even concrete, that's not a big deal, but any interior surface, it's usually pretty loud. Also, the general hardness of this sole makes it so on surfaces like concrete, unless you really dig in and put your weight on it, if you're just kind of skating along, you can actually, skate this back and forth on the concrete like this. There's absolutely no grip unless you have at least, say 80% of your weight pushing down on the back there. And you can almost skate on them like it's an ice rink on concrete, which is a little bit strange. And every once in a while, if I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, I'll sometimes slip, on concrete, which is odd. So there's that for the sole. So I'd be a bigger fan with a day and night sole, rubber stud sole, or even if it was something proprietary, it doesn't have to be name brand, or with a deeper lug sole that might have a little bit more cushion, a little bit more give. So the last thing I'd change about these boots is the pull tab. For me, the instep is plenty generous. The gusseted tongue and the way the laces are let you open it up plenty big to get your foot in without an issue whatsoever. So the pull tab is just superfluous. And when I'm wearing cuffed up denim, anytime I get out of the car, stand up from sitting down, the cuffed up denim ends up getting caught here and I have to pull it back down around, which is a minor annoyance, but something that I have to think about literally every time I wear the boot. So I thought about cutting the pull tabs off, but then I thought that was just stupid. So yeah, kept them on there. But yeah, in the future, Taylor Stitch, if you're watching, I probably would not include a pull tab when you have a boot with a generous instep. And that's really it. Those are the things that I would change about the boot. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video today. If you have any questions about the boots, you know the drill. Leave them in the comments below and I will answer. I'll answer at length. Whatever you need me to answer, I'm happy to spend the time doing that. With all that said, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Appreciate you watching. Have a fantastic day.